The story of Adam and Eve, it's as old as time itself. Passed down from generation to generation. What if everything we thought we knew was wrong? What if the true message has been obscured by time? It's a mirror reflecting our own lives. It's about the essence of being human, the terrifying beauty of free will. Have you ever stopped to think what life without having free will would be like? The responsibility of choice. Join us on this journey. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This simple yet profound statement sets the stage for the drama that is about to unfold. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Euthan, God spoke, "Let there be light." Then there was light. With each act of creation, God brought order to chaos, beauty to emptiness. He separated the waters from the heavens, formed the land, and adorned it with vibrant life. The world teemed with plants and animals, a testament to God's boundless creativity, but something was missing, something unique, something that would reflect the very image of the Creator himself. Then God decided to create man in his likeness, and with the dust of the earth, God formed man. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This was Adam, the first human, created in the image of God. Imagine a world untouched by sin, where beauty and tranquility reigned supreme. This was the Garden of Eden, the idyllic home of Adam and Eve. Here, amidst lush vegetation, crystal-clear rivers, and an abundance of fruit trees, they lived in perfect harmony with God and nature. Every need was met, every desire fulfilled. Theirs was a life of pure bliss, free from pain, suffering, and death. God walked with them in the cool of the day, sharing his wisdom, love, and guidance. He entrusted them with the care of his creation, giving them dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that moved upon the earth. It was a responsibility they embraced with joy and reverence. Within this paradise, a seed of temptation lay dormant. They were forbidden to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The serpent, cunning and deceptive, saw an opportunity. With subtle whispers and seductive promises, he planted seeds of doubt in Eve's mind. He questioned God's motives, distorted his words, and appealed to her desire for knowledge and power. Eve, torn between her trust in God and the serpent's enticing words, made a fateful decision. She ate the forbidden fruit and gave some to Adam, who also partook. In that moment, everything changed. The world as they knew it shattered. Sin, like a venomous poison, entered the human experience, casting a long shadow over creation. The consequences of their choice were immediate and devastating. They felt shame, fear, and separation from God for the first time. The harmony of Eden was broken, replaced by pain, suffering, and death. Their disobedience had fractured their relationship with God and with each other. Amidst the wreckage of their transgression, a glimmer of hope remained. God, in his infinite mercy, promised redemption. The book of Genesis tells us that God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, the creator of the universe, stooping down to gather a handful of earth. God, who could have spoken man into existence with a single word, chose instead to create him from the most basic, most humble of materials. This act of humility, this willingness to get his hands dirty, reveals a God who is intimately involved in the act of creation. It also reveals a God who desires a close, personal relationship with his creation. Adam, formed from the dust, embodies both the frailty and the potential of humanity. He is a creature of the earth, grounded in the physical world. God, having formed Adam from the dust, did something truly extraordinary. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This breath, this divine spark, is what separates humanity from all other creatures. It is the source of our consciousness, our creativity, our capacity for love, and our longing for something beyond ourselves. With this breath, Adam became more than just a physical being. He became a reflection of God himself, created in his image and likeness. This image, this divine imprint, is not a physical resemblance. It is a reflection of God's character, his attributes, his very nature. The Garden of Eden, the idyllic home of Adam and Eve, was a place of unparalleled beauty and abundance. Imagine a world untouched by sin, where the air was sweet, the water pure, and the earth overflowed with life. Lush forests teemed with exotic animals, their calls echoing through the trees. Crystal clear rivers flowed through verdant meadows, their banks adorned with vibrant flowers. Fruit trees laden with ripe, delicious fruit offered their bounty freely. Adam and Eve, naked and unashamed, lived in perfect harmony with each other and with all of creation. There was no need for clothing, for they knew no shame. There was no need for work, for the earth provided all they needed. Section 4, the gift of free will. God, in his infinite wisdom, created Adam and Eve with a gift unlike any other free will. This gift, this ability to choose, set humanity apart from all other creatures. It was a reflection of God's own nature, for God himself is a being of free will. He chose to create the universe, he chose to create humanity, and he chose to give humanity the freedom to choose him. This freedom, however, came with a profound responsibility. Adam and Eve were free to love and obey God or to reject him. They were free to walk in his ways or to forge their own path. This freedom, this ability to choose, was not a burden but a gift. Section 5, dominion over all. God gave Adam and Eve dominion over all creation. He entrusted them with the care of the earth and all its creatures. This dominion was not a license to exploit or destroy, but a sacred responsibility. Adam and Eve were called to be stewards of God's creation, to cultivate it, to protect it, to nurture it. They were to be God's representatives on earth, reflecting his love and care for all living things. This call to stewardship was an expression of God's trust in humanity. Section 1. The Serpent's Whisper. The Garden of Eden, bathed in the golden light of a new dawn, seemed a picture of perfect tranquility. Adam and Eve moved through their paradise with familiar ease, their hearts filled with gratitude for the bounty that surrounded them. Unseen, a shadow stirred in the depths of the garden. The serpent, subtle as a breeze and cunning as a fox, slithered through the undergrowth, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. He had watched Adam and Eve, observed their innocence, their trust in God. He saw not naivete, but an opportunity, a chance to plant a seed of discord in their hearts. The serpent, a master of deception, approached Eve as she tended a cluster of vibrant flowers. His voice, smooth as honey, dripped with feigned concern. Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden?" he questioned, his words laced with skepticism. Eve, startled by the serpent's sudden appearance, turned to face him. "Of course not," she replied, her voice steady. The serpent, sensing a flicker of uncertainty in Eve's eyes, pressed his advantage. "You will not surely die," he scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Eve's gaze drifted towards the forbidden tree, its branches laden with ripe, enticing fruit. A seed of doubt, planted by the serpent's words, began to take root in her heart. She had always trusted God implicitly, but the serpent's words, his insistence that God was withholding something precious, chipped away at her certainty. The more Eve listened, the more appealing the serpent's words became. The serpent, satisfied that his poison had taken hold, slithered back into the shadows, leaving Eve alone with her tumultuous thoughts. She stood before the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, its branches heavy with fruit, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze. The fruit, once so unappealing, now seemed irresistible. It glowed with an inner light, beckoning her closer. Eve reached out a trembling hand, her fingers brushing against the smooth skin of the fruit. A wave of longing washed over her. A desire so intense it threatened to consume her. She plucked the fruit from the branch, its weight surprisingly heavy in her hand. Eve lifted the fruit to her lips, its sweet aroma filling her senses. She took a bite, the juice staining her lips like blood. The taste was intoxicating, a heady mix of pleasure and power. In that single, irreversible act, the world shifted on its axis. The innocence of Eden shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of sin. Eve, her eyes now open to the knowledge of good and evil, felt a wave of shame wash over her. The realization of her nakedness, once a source of comfort and freedom, now filled her with a crippling self-consciousness. Adam, his heart heavy with a love that now tasted of betrayal and despair, took the fruit from Eve's outstretched hand. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of love, anger, and a deep, abiding sadness. He knew the consequences of their actions, the punishment that awaited them, yet he couldn't bear the thought of facing eternity without her, even if that eternity was now marred by sin and separation from God. Adam raised the fruit to his lips and took a bite, the taste bittersweet on his tongue. In that instant, the shadow of shame fell upon them both, a tangible reminder of their disobedience. The Garden of Eden, their sanctuary, their paradise, would never be the same. The act was done. The fruit, once forbidden, now lay half-eaten on the ground, a stark reminder of their transgression. The consequences, as God had warned, were swift and severe. Adam and Eve, their eyes now opened to the knowledge of good and evil, saw the world and themselves with a terrifying clarity. Their nakedness, once a symbol of their innocence, now filled them with a searing shame. They cowered among the trees, their bodies trembling not from the cool evening air, but from the chilling realization of their disobedience. God, in his omniscience, knew what they had done. The harmony of Eden, once unbroken, now vibrated with the discord of their sin. He called out to them, his voice echoing through the garden, a blend of sorrow and disappointment. "Where are you?" he asked, not because he didn't know, but because he wanted them to acknowledge their actions, to take responsibility for their choice. Adam and Eve, their voices hesitant and laced with guilt, confessed their mortal sin. They had listened to the serpent, they explained, enticed by his promises of knowledge and power. But the knowledge they had gained was not the liberating, empowering knowledge they had imagined. It was a knowledge heavy with the weight of sin, a knowledge that separated them from God, from each other, and from the purity of their own hearts. The power they had craved was an illusion, a serpent's whisper that had poisoned their souls. They had sought to become like God, knowing good and evil. True godhood, they now realized, lay not in knowledge or power, but in love, obedience, and communion with the Creator. Their act of defiance had not elevated them to God's level, but had, ironically, plunged them into a darkness they had never before known. The consequences of Adam and Eve's disobedience extended far beyond their own hearts. The harmony of Eden, once a testament to God's perfect design, was shattered. The serpent, cursed for his role in the deception, would forever crawl on his belly, a symbol of his deceit and the enmity that would exist between his offspring and the offspring of Eve. Adam and Eve faced the consequences of their choice. The ground, which had once yielded its fruit effortlessly, would now produce thorns and thistles. Childbirth would be accompanied by pain and toil, and the ultimate promise, death, was casted onto human. The ultimate separation from God and his creation cast its long shadow over all humanity. The story of Adam and Eve, though set in a distant past, resonates with a timeless relevance. It speaks to the human condition, to our capacity for both great love and profound brokenness. We see ourselves in Adam and Eve, in their longing for knowledge, their desire for something more, their vulnerability to temptation. We too have tasted the forbidden fruit, made choices that have separated us from God, from each other, and from the best versions of ourselves. We experience the consequences of those choices every day, in the broken relationships, the environmental degradation, the violence and injustice that plague our world. The story of Adam and Eve is not just a tale of transgression and punishment. It is also a story of hope, of redemption, of God's unwavering love for his creation. The serpent's words, whispered in the stillness of the garden, had planted seeds of discord not just between humanity and God, but also between man and woman. Adam, in his defense, pointed to Eve, blaming her for succumbing to temptation. Eve, in turn, pointed to the serpent, shifting responsibility for her actions. The harmony that had once characterized their relationship, the mutual respect and love they had shared, was now fractured by blame and resentment. This tendency to shift blame to avoid taking responsibility for our actions is a human trait as old as time itself. It is a defense mechanism, a way of protecting ourselves from the painful consequences of our choices. But it is also a barrier to reconciliation, a wall that separates us from God, from each other, and from the healing power of forgiveness. Section 6. A cycle of blame. The blame game, initiated in the Garden of Eden, continues to this day. We blame others for our mistakes, our shortcomings, our failures. We blame circumstances, upbringing, societal pressures. We even blame God himself, questioning his goodness, his love, his very existence in the face of suffering and injustice. This cycle of blame, while understandable, is ultimately destructive. It keeps us trapped in a cycle of anger, resentment, and despair. It prevents us from experiencing the liberating power of taking ownership of our choices, of acknowledging our mistakes, of seeking forgiveness and reconciliation. The story of Adam and Eve challenges us to break free from this cycle, to embrace the transformative power of personal responsibility. It reminds us that true freedom, true joy, lies not in blaming others, but in owning our actions and seeking God's grace and forgiveness. Section 1. A covenant forged in fire. The Garden of Eden, once their sanctuary, now lay behind them, its gates guarded by cherubim and a flaming sword. Expelled from paradise, Adam and Eve faced a world vastly different from the one they had known. The ground, once yielding its bounty effortlessly, now resisted their touch. The animals, once their companions, now seemed distant, their eyes reflecting a primal fear. Amidst the hardship, a flicker of hope remained. God, in his infinite mercy, had not abandoned them. He provided them with clothing, a tangible symbol of his continuing care. He promised a savior, one who would crush the head of the serpent. This promise became the bedrock of their faith, a beacon of hope in a world now shrouded in shadow. Section 2. The Seeds of Faith. The story of Adam and Eve is often viewed through the lens of their disobedience, their fateful choice to eat the forbidden fruit. Within the narrative of their transgression lies a deeper truth, a testament to the enduring power of faith, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Stripped of their innocence, burdened by the knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve could have easily succumbed to despair. They could have cursed God, blamed each other, and retreated into a bitterness that would have poisoned their souls. They chose a different path. They chose to cling to the promise of redemption, to nurture the seeds of faith that God had planted in their hearts. We see their faith reflected in their actions, in their willingness to accept the consequences of their choices, to toil and strive in a world now marred by sin. We see it in their decision to name their children, an act of hope that transcended the darkness of their present reality. The birth of their first child, Cain, brought a new dimension to their lives. The joy of parenthood, the awe of holding a life formed in their image, mingled with the weight of their responsibility. They were no longer just Adam and Eve, the first man and woman. They were now Abba and Imma, father and mother, tasked with guiding a new generation through the complexities of a world forever changed by their actions. Their love for Cain, fierce and protective, mirrored God's love for them, a love that persisted despite their failings. They taught him about God, sharing the stories of creation, the fall, and the promise of a savior. They instilled in him the importance of obedience, the consequences of sin, and the boundless nature of God's forgiveness. Their legacy, passed down through generations, was not just a story of transgression, but a testament to the enduring power of love, faith, and the hope of redemption. Adam and Eve were not perfect beings. They were, from the moment of their creation, a paradox of strength and frailty, wisdom and naivete. Their story is not a fairy tale of flawless heroes, but a raw and honest portrayal of the human condition. With all its complexities and contradictions, they made mistakes, they stumbled, they fell short of God's glory. Yet even in their imperfections, they reflected the image of their Creator. God, in His infinite wisdom, does not require perfection from us. He desires our hearts, our willingness to love and obey, our faith that persists even in the face of our own failings. The story of Adam and Eve is a reminder that we are all imperfect vessels, capable of both great love and profound brokenness. It is in our brokenness, however, that God's grace shines most brightly, transforming our imperfections into opportunities for growth, forgiveness, and redemption. Section 5, Through the Valley of Shadows. The story of Adam and Eve does not end with their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. We see their legacy in Abraham, Moses, and David, and ultimately in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the one who came to redeem humanity. Even in the darkest valleys, God's love pursues us. Section 1. The Garden Within, the Garden of Eden. Was it ever a real place? A physical location marked on a map now lost to time? Or was it something more, something eternal, existing outside the boundaries of space and time? Perhaps the Garden of Eden is not a place we leave behind, but a state of being we carry within us. A place of innocence, of communion with God, of perfect harmony with creation. We catch glimpses of this garden in moments of profound peace, in acts of selfless love, in the awe-inspiring beauty of the natural world. Yet, like Adam and Eve, we also carry within us the knowledge of good and evil, the scars of our own transgressions, the weight of a world marred by sin. We are caught in a tension, a longing for the garden we have lost, and the reality of the world we inhabit. Section 2, A Legacy Written in Dust. The story of Adam and Eve is not just their story, it is the story of humanity itself, written in the dust of creation, etched on the tablets of our hearts. It is a story of choices, consequences, and the enduring power of hope. We are all descendants of Adam and Eve, inheritors of their legacy of both brokenness and redemption. We too face temptations, make choices that have far-reaching consequences, and experience the sting of sin's sting. Yet, we are also recipients of God's immeasurable grace, His unwavering love, His promise to never leave us or forsake us. The story of Adam and Eve does not end in despair, but points towards a greater truth, that even in our failings, God's love pursues us, His grace redeems us. We are not defined by our mistakes, but by our willingness to learn, to grow, to seek forgiveness and reconciliation. Section 3, The Unfolding Story. As we reflect on the story of Adam and Eve, we are left with a profound question. What choices will we make today? Will we succumb to the whispers of temptation, the allure of instant gratification, the temptation to blame others for our shortcomings, or will we choose a different path? The path of faith, of obedience, of radical love and forgiveness, the path that leads back to the garden within, the path that leads us closer to God and to our true selves. The story of Adam and Eve is not a static narrative confined to the pages of an ancient text. It is a living story, unfolding in our lives each and every day. May we, their descendants, have the courage to choose wisely, to embrace the transformative power of grace, and to write our own chapters in this epic tale of love, loss, and the enduring hope of redemption. The story continues. What will your chapter say?